attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially so if you're selling products, it's because of the product liability. That alone
you need insurance,
is like
you need
destroy your
liability,
entire
you
future.
need forms that your sales forms have to protect you from liability
And there's
exposure.
particular things just for the state of Michigan, right, that you need to be aware of.
Sure, there's consumer laws.
Right. So, I mean, getting somebody in your state who knows state law and how it applies to, the business you're in is extremely
a lot of
important.
times people don't realize that they're engaging in an activity that actually requires state licensing. So you need to contact the licensing authorities to make sure that the proper permits and the proper licenses are obtained. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not overly complicated, but it's a question of what is your sphere of understanding. If you're the entrepreneur and you're starting the business, you don't need to be a lawyer, you don't need to be a legal expert, you don't need to be a CPA, but you should have good professionals working for you to give you the right advice and to make sure that you don't go astray.
Ken, one of the things about your background that I really liked was the fact that you also have accounting or accountancy as, undergraduate work that you did. And, my background's a couple of degrees in accountancy and then another master's in finance. And combining accountancy with law, you're really the best of both worlds for an entrepreneur and for people who, you're not just an attorney, you've got that other piece. You understand the business piece, and to me that is extremely critical when you're dealing with entrepreneurs and business clients, because you have a way different perspective on things than somebody who's not trained in that discipline.
Yeah, there's definitely an advantage to it. The accounting background makes you comfortable with a financial statement, comfortable with a balance sheet, comfortable with negotiating terms with a lender in terms of loan and ratios. And when you get out of law school from a liberal arts background and you don't really have, particularly if you've had no business experience yourself and you haven't had any business training or business, or accounting or business background, it's a lot more difficult to get up to speed on those issues. There's a lot of lawyers have, but it's like, I think it's a great advantage going in. It's accounting is actually a very good discipline. I was a marketing major actually in undergrad, and marketing I loved and enjoyed, but I didn't find it challenging at the undergrad level, so I enjoyed the accounting classes and switched over to accounting. I was worried about it because accounting was more difficult. And I was worried about having a negative impact on my GPA in terms of getting into law school.
I understand that.
But it worked out.
Yeah, I had to get past that cost accounting class. The rest of it was okay, but cost accounting?
I hated statistics, is what killed me. That's the only class I absolutely could not stand.
That and nonprofit accounting, I didn't like that at all.
Yeah,
I'm more a profit person.
Right. They had so many formulas on not-for-profit. There were like 7 little key goal rules that you had to abide by. And I had an easy not-for-profit accounting professor. I still remember
so
that.
It all worked out. So.
Yeah, it all worked out fine.
Well, Ken, understanding your background that you were originally a marketing major and then switched on over, marketing is really, very entrepreneurial. And you're very entrepreneurial. I mean, your firm works with a lot of entrepreneurs, you work with them, but you also have an entrepreneurial edge yourself that you've begun to manifest in terms of a radio show that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about your radio show? First of all, it's called Financial Crisis Talk Center. Before we get into the detail of it, why'd you pick the topic financial crisis?
It was laid out there so easy for you. We started it back in, I think, in October.
Of 2000?
Of last year, of 2008. And that was right when the auto crisis was, the gas, right after gas shot up to $4 a gallon, the auto sales were stopping, and you could just see the entire economy coming to the skids. We had been talking about starting a radio show for a while because I had been a guest on a show called Your Money with John Gene Grande and Jeff Sprague. And we would show up on that show about once a month and kind of talk business issues, estate planning issues. So I was getting familiar and comfortable with the radio medium. And so I was talking with my advertising people, and I said, what did you think about starting a radio show? And we costed it out and checked it out. And then we were just kind of sitting there, and I said, well, let's just call it the Financial Crisis Talk Center. What could be more germane to the topic? And at the time, and I still feel that way, I had a tremendous amount of passion and I would have to say anger about what I saw happening in the marketplace. To this day, the way in which the country reacted to Detroit's problems with the auto crisis floors me. The Tennessee and the southern states that absolutely, the Senator Corker not a penny for the auto industry, not one dime, not one dime. And then so they brought us all the way to the brink of absolute disaster. And it wasn't, and even though our congressmen and our senators and our media was doing everything they could to point out the fact that if the auto companies go down, it's going to have a horrific effect on the global economy. And you'd think that these senators, who are intelligent people, would look beyond their local politics and think about the common good of the country. But they didn't. And it wasn't until GM filed bankruptcy and they were closing plants in Tennessee that all of a sudden they said, hey, we got to do something about this. Yeah. So it's like that anger and that frustration and seeing what the impact would have here is really what was the impetus to get the show started. And and people had a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety about it, so it was fun for people to call in and we were kind of just venting against the West.
I still can't even believe that I have witnessed the bankruptcy of GM in my lifetime. I mean, I can't even believe what I've seen in the past 12 months in my life from a business standpoint.
We grew up with GM was stronger than virtually most countries. The biggest corporation in the world. And now we have GM files bankruptcy, Chrysler files bankruptcy. The government basically finances the bankruptcies. There's so many insane things that have happened. I mean, if you think about it.
Not the kind of business I studied in B school. Not what I want to even.
No.
It's not a good model for success. Let's just put it that way.
And there's a tremendous unfairness, in my view, in the way in which things are unfolding. And in that, what I tell people now from the Financial Crisis Talk Center, and what I focus on, is the notion that if you're underwater in your home, which right now 1/3 of all American households, homeowners, are underwater in their home. The mortgages between the first and second mortgage exceeds the market value of their home. That's a phenomenal, it's a phenomenal statistic. It's horrible. And if all of a sudden you've sustained this tremendous loss in asset value because your home that was worth your home in West Bloomfield that was worth $450,000 and today is worth $325,000, but your mortgage is still at $400,000 or $425,000. So you've got this shift where you're underwater. If you look at what the government supported GM and Chrysler to do, is they said take all of your bad assets and leave them in old Chrysler and old GM. We will allow you to pick and choose whatever good assets you have and go and throw them into a new company. Here it is. There's your new company. You get a clean balance sheet. You have no debt. You can go forward, and all the money you make in the future will go to the benefit of the government, who's currently the shareholder, and ultimately the new shareholders. What's in the past is gone.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It's beautiful
for some people.
Yeah, for them. But what do they do for us? What do they do for the person who's
shareholders
who's lost $250,000 in value in their home, and so now their net worth is zero or negative, and the mortgage company says, we're not going to reduce the principal on your house. We're going to just expect you to pay your mortgage, or we're going to foreclose your home and throw you out of your home. So yeah, we have some programs, loan modification programs, and we've had some initiatives at a government level to help, but they haven't gone nearly as far as they were promised and as they should. So the focus that the Financial Crisis Talk Center is really focused on is what I call financial crisis management, which is using the tools that we've identified as for financial crisis management to leverage your future income to go for you, rather than to let that income really pay for the debts of the past, the credit card companies and the mortgage companies. Now, they don't like that.
And doing it without bankruptcy, though? I mean, or
sometimes doing it with bankruptcy, sometimes doing it without. The primary goal is, start with the goal. The goal is, what's the best way to leverage your future income so that it's not paying off debts of the past?
And you're not going to lose what you currently have.
Correct. So bankruptcy, the tools that we use are bankruptcy is one, short sales on homes, loan modifications, and what I call debt resolution, which is settling up with the credit card companies at major discounts, but not using these debt settlement companies because I think I don't like companies where they're not Michigan-based, they're not run by professionals in Michigan, they're not accountable if they take your money. Your remedy to call the FTC and say I've been ripped